Have you ever considered the challenges faced by foreign women in abusive relationships in Europe? This question invites us to delve into the shadows, to uncover the unseen struggle that many women face, far from home and often without a lifeline. Imagine the daunting reality of trying to navigate a complex legal system in a language you barely understand. Picture the fear of seeking help, only to be met with the threat of deportation or the chilling indifference of authorities who don't comprehend your rights. This is the chilling reality for countless women trapped in abusive relationships, their cries for help muffled by a language barrier and entangled in a web of legal and immigration issues. But the complexity of their struggle doesn't stop there. It extends to the cultural differences that can make the path to freedom even more elusive. The norms and expectations around relationships and gender roles can differ wildly from one culture to another, causing misunderstanding and even stigmatization. These cultural differences can further isolate these women, making it even harder to reach out and find the support they desperately need. Isolation is a silent tormentor. It can strip away self-esteem, fuel despair, and amplify the pain of abuse. For foreign women in Europe, the isolation brought about by being far from their home country, without a support network, can make an abusive situation feel inescapable. Adding to this is the burden of financial dependence. Visa restrictions and limited work opportunities can leave these women financially tied to their abusers, making the prospect of leaving seem impossible. And even if they do muster the courage to break free, a lack of awareness about support services can leave them feeling lost and helpless. In the face of such adversity, fear of discrimination or racism can further deter these women from seeking help. The trauma of abuse, compounded by these challenges, can lead to severe mental health concerns, deepening their struggle. These are the silent battles they fight, often unseen and unheard. The struggle of foreign women facing abusive relationships in Europe is a complex tapestry of challenges, each strand representing a distinct hurdle to overcome. It's a struggle that calls for our empathy, understanding, and action. Imagine finding yourself in a situation where your voice is silenced by the language you do not understand. This is the harsh reality for many foreign women trapped in abusive relationships in Europe. Unable to communicate effectively, these women find themselves isolated not just by their abuser, but by the language barrier that stands between them and the help they desperately need. The language barrier is not just a wall, it's a labyrinth. It hinders their ability to reach out to authorities, to express the torment they are experiencing, and to seek the support services that they need. It's like being trapped in a room with all the doors and windows locked. But the keys are there, just out of reach, hidden behind complex phrases and unfamiliar words. But the labyrinth doesn't end there. It extends into the realm of legal and immigration issues. Many of these women live in constant fear of deportation. Their abuser often wields this fear as a weapon, keeping them in a perpetual state of anxiety and uncertainty. This fear, coupled with a lack of knowledge about their rights under European laws, prevents them from breaking free from their predicament. The legal system, which should serve as a refuge for victims, often becomes an intimidating fortress for these women. They may feel like they are navigating through a maze of statutes and legal jargon, without a guide to help them understand their rights and options. The fear of deportation, the threat of losing their children or their livelihood, can make them feel trapped, like a bird in a cage, with the law acting as the bars rather than the key. The irony is bitter. The very systems designed to protect and support them become part of their struggle. The law becomes a foreign language, one that they cannot speak or understand. The silence that ensues, the isolation, the fear, and the uncertainty are often more deafening than the loudest cries for help. The law is a foreign language, and silence becomes their only refuge. As we delve deeper into this issue, we must remember that every voice matters. Every woman deserves to be heard, understood, and protected, irrespective of her linguistic or legal proficiency. And it is our collective responsibility to ensure that this becomes a reality. Every culture has its unique norms, but what happens when these norms become chains? The heart of culture is deeply woven into the fabric of our lives, shaping our perceptions, beliefs, and behaviors. But when cultural norms become a prison, they can hinder the ability of foreign women in Europe to break free from abusive relationships. Cultural differences can create a chasm between these women and the society in which they are living. The norms and expectations of relationships and gender roles in their home country might be vastly different from those in their host country. This divergence can lead to misunderstandings and miscommunication, making it challenging for these women to understand and navigate the resources available to them. The specter of stigma or shame might also loom large, preventing them from seeking assistance. In some cultures, seeking help from outside the family or speaking out about abuse is seen as dishonorable or disgraceful. This cultural confinement can make the walls of an abusive relationship seem insurmountable. Beyond cultural confinement, isolation amplifies these challenges. Being away from their home country, these women may lack a support network. The familiar faces and comforting voices that could offer solace and guidance are miles away. Without someone to confide in or seek help from, they become islands of solitude in an ocean of strangers. Moreover, isolation is not just geographical. Language barriers can create a sense of emotional and psychological isolation. Imagine the feeling of screaming into a void, your pleas for help lost in translation. This isolation can make the world seem cold and indifferent, trapping these women in a cycle of abuse and loneliness. Thus, cultural differences and isolation can become invisible shackles, chaining foreign women in Europe to abusive relationships. It's a complex issue that requires a nuanced understanding and a compassionate approach. Breaking these chains involves not just providing resources and support, but also fostering cultural sensitivity and inclusivity. In the midst of foreign lands, they are islands of solitude. But it's time to bridge the distance, to extend a hand, and to let them know that they're not alone. Dependency can be a dangerous thing, especially when it's financial. For many foreign women in Europe, this financial dependence on their partners becomes an unbreakable chain, binding them to a life of abuse and fear. It's a situation that's exacerbated by visa restrictions or lack of work opportunities, leaving these women with little to no options for self-sustainability. Imagine a life where every step you take, every decision you make is dictated by another, where the only way to see your family is through the goodwill of someone else, where your children could be taken away if you dare to defy. This is the stark reality for many women, but the chains of financial dependence are not the only things holding these women back. There's another, equally insidious barrier, the ignorance trap. It's a trap born out of limited knowledge about local support services or available resources for victims of abuse. This lack of awareness can be a significant roadblock in their path to freedom. Picture a woman trapped in an abusive relationship, desperate to escape but unsure where to turn. She might not know that there are organizations out there, ready and willing to help. She might not realize that there are laws in place to protect her, irrespective of her immigration status. She might not be aware that there are resources available to help her start anew. This is the ignorance trap, and it's just as binding as any financial chain. In some cases, this ignorance can even lead to further victimization. Stories abound of women locked up in mental institutions because their abusive partner or ex-partner claimed they were crazy. Without the language skills to defend themselves or the knowledge to seek legal counsel, these women are left defenseless and alone. The price these women pay for their freedom is high, the chains of dependence and ignorance heavy and unyielding. But it's crucial to remember that these chains can be broken, that there are resources and support available. Their freedom is high-priced, and ignorance is a trap they can't escape. But with awareness, understanding, and support, they can begin to find their way out of the darkness, towards a life of independence and safety. In the face of adversity, fear and trauma can be overwhelming, but there is always a glimmer of hope. Our journey into the unseen struggles of foreign women in abusive relationships in Europe now brings us to a critical juncture, the intersection of fear, trauma, and the pursuit of hope. Fear is a constant companion for these women, not just the fear of physical harm, but the dread of discrimination or racism. It's a fear that can paralyze, that can silence their pleas for help. They fear the dismissive shrug, the uninterested gaze, the prejudiced mind that sees them as nothing more than an outsider. This fear, coupled with the trauma of abuse, can lead to a devastating impact on their mental well-being. The trauma they experience is not just physical, it's emotional, psychological, and deeply personal. It can manifest as anxiety, depression, even post-traumatic stress disorder. They carry the weight of their experiences, often in silence, sometimes alone, and always with a heavy heart. Yet in the depths of this fear and trauma, a spark of hope persists, a hope for change, for a better tomorrow, for a life free from the shackles of abuse. This hope, though often faint and fragile, is a beacon of light in the darkness of their reality. Supporting these women in their pursuit of hope necessitates a holistic approach. It requires cultural sensitivity, acknowledging and respecting their backgrounds and experiences. It demands language accessibility, ensuring they can communicate their needs and understand their rights. It calls for legal protection, irrespective of immigration status. And it involves the provision of specialized services that address their unique needs. Efforts must be made to combat discrimination and racism, to increase awareness about available support services, and to provide mental health resources tailored to their experiences. More importantly, it requires empathy, understanding, and a commitment to change. In the darkest of times, they hold on to the faintest glimmer of hope, waiting for a dawn of change.